The echo of hurried footsteps cut sharply through the polished corporate hallway, followed by the muffled sound of a woman struggling to keep steady. In the next second, the heavy bathroom door slammed open as two men pushed a terrified woman inside, her breath shaking, her hands trembling as she tried to remain composed despite the fear rising in her chest. She was the CEO of the company, a woman who commanded boardrooms with confidence, yet now she stood cornered in a place she should have been safe in. She wasn't expecting help. She wasn't expecting anyone to walk in, and she certainly wasn't expecting that the person who would enter, at the worst possible moment, was a single dad nobody in the building ever noticed. If you believe in kindness, humanity, and second chances, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Soul. Your support keeps these real and heart-touching stories alive. Amara Khan had built her empire from scratch, rising not because she was privileged but because she was relentless. Growing up the daughter of a seamstress and a taxi driver, she learned the meaning of survival early. Yet despite her polished image and the respect she commanded, she carried a quiet loneliness inside her heart. Years of sacrifices had cost her friendships, relationships, and even her health, but she kept fighting because she believed her work mattered. She believed she could change something, maybe not the whole world, but at least some part of it. On the other end of the staircase, taking slow steps while holding a lunchbox wrapped in a cartoon cloth, walked Zayan Ali, a 33-year-old single father who worked maintenance in the same building. Unlike Amara, nobody knew his name. People barely nodded when he passed. He was the kind of man who blended into the background, gentle voice, tired eyes, always polite, always overlooked. But inside him lived a father's fierce love, the kind that kept him awake during long nights fixing pipes in old buildings just to afford medicine for his 7-year-old daughter, Elena, who suffered from a chronic condition that made every day unpredictable for her. Zayan was quiet because life had humbled him. His wife had left soon after their daughter's diagnosis, saying she couldn't handle the responsibility. Zayan never blamed her aloud, but the wound of abandonment shaped everything he did. He had taken the job at this corporate building not because it paid much, but because it gave him flexible hours to be with his daughter. He had no dreams left for himself, only hopes for the little girl who looked at him with big, trusting eyes. That morning, he had come in early to finish repairing a leak on the 14th floor. He carried his worn-out toolbox and hummed softly, thinking of the way Elena laughed when he braided her hair. But when he stepped into the hallway near the executive restrooms, something felt off. The air felt heavy, charged with a wrongness he couldn't name. Then he heard a sound, small, strained, like someone trying not to cry. Inside the bathroom, Amara was pressed against the wall as the two men blocked her path. They had cornered her under the pretext of a private conversation, one that quickly turned into intimidation. They were mid-level managers who had long resented her leadership, believing her success was undeserved. They wanted to scare her, force her into backing a shady deal she had firmly rejected. Their plan wasn't physical harm, but they wanted control, fear, power. And fear was already starting to show in her trembling breath. Zayan pushed the door open because he thought he heard someone call out for help, or maybe because some instinct in him refused to ignore the tension. The men whipped their heads toward him instantly. For a moment, the bathroom fell silent. Zayan's eyes moved from them to Amara, who looked like she was holding her breath just to stay upright. The two men tried to mask their intentions with forced smiles, claiming they were discussing something urgent. But Zayan's heart dropped when he saw how tightly Amara was gripping the sink behind her, as if anchoring herself. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't brave by nature. But he had spent years shielding his fragile daughter from a harsh world, learning to stand tall even while scared. And in that moment, something within him, something primal, something deeply protective, rose to the surface. He put down his lunchbox, stepped forward, and said in a steady voice he didn't know he had, "She doesn't look okay. Please step back." They laughed, mocking him for being just a maintenance guy. But their arrogance only fueled something in Zayan, because he had heard that tone before. He had heard it when doctors spoke to him like he was incapable, when his ex-wife told him He wasn't strong enough to be a single dad. When society dismissed him because he was invisible, he knew too well the pain of being powerless, and he refused to stand by and let someone else feel the same. Amara looked at him with eyes full of mixed emotions: fear, disbelief, and something softer, a glimmer of fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, someone cared. Zayan didn't shout or fight. He simply positioned himself in front of her, forming a shield with his body. His palms were shaking, but he held his ground. His presence, calm, firm, unwavering, shifted something in the air. The men smirked but slowly backed away, realizing that any further confrontation would draw attention and cost them their careers. They left with harsh glares, vowing silently that this wasn't over, but they still left. When the door finally closed behind them, Amara collapsed onto the floor, not in weakness but in emotional exhaustion. The fear she'd held inside broke like a dam, and tears streamed down her face silently. She wasn't a woman who cried easily. She wasn't someone who showed vulnerability at all. But in that moment, she wasn't a CEO. She was a human being overwhelmed by the weight of everything. Zayan knelt beside her, unsure if he should speak, unsure if he deserved to even be in the same space as her. But all he said, with the gentlest voice, was, "You're safe now." That sentence broke her open even more. Over the next hour, the two sat in the quiet bathroom as she gathered herself and he listened, not as an employee, not as a stranger, but as someone who understood pain. She told him about the pressure, the burden of leading alone, the silent battles she fought. He didn't offer solutions. He offered empathy, and sometimes that is enough. Amara insisted on reporting the men, promising to take action to ensure no one else would feel unsafe in her building. But she also did something unexpected. She asked Zayan about his life. Nobody ever asked him that. Not really. He told her about Elena, about the fear of not earning enough, about the lonely struggle of fatherhood. His voice cracked when he spoke about his daughter's condition, but he tried hard to stay composed. She listened with the same intensity with which she handled board meetings, because this, for the first time in a long time, felt real. After that day, Amara made sure Zayan's life changed. She increased his salary, offered him better hours, connected him with medical support for his daughter. But more importantly, she started noticing him. Not just him, people like him. The ones who go unseen. And slowly something else grew between them. Not romance, at least not yet. Something deeper: respect, trust, gratitude, a shared understanding of loneliness and responsibility. She admired his courage and he admired her resilience. They became an unlikely friendship built on a single moment of bravery.